Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Coach's Corner. And today, of course, we're going to talk about Sora because Kameme had a good run at Glitch. Usually, we talk about the character's history, but Sora, one of the newest comers to Smash. And yeah, I mean, I've always been a pretty big believer of Sora. I don't think like Sora is. I think Sora is around that like top 20 to top 30 range. You know what I mean? Like, and my top tier is like top 20. So I always think that Sora is like in the cusp of getting top tier. And, obviously the character is very strong on paper. I'm a very on paper kind of, or I generally like to think on paper. So it's like, I think the character's strengths, the character is not really fleshed out yet. We saw some IDJ combos, more so IDJ confirms coming out from Kameme with the IDJ Nairs, and when he did go up against fast followers, we did see some attempts at some IDJ fair stuff, which is the more harder things. But yeah, I guess we can just start off like what you guys generally think of Sora, maybe even like your initial impressions on release. On release, I thought Sora before we figured out all the combo stuff, I was like, okay, this character is like pretty solid. The double jump, like the disadvantage looks a little shaky with with the really long double jump and stuff like that. And then when I saw, all the crazy combo stuff, I was like, okay, this character eventually will be good. It just really comes down to if a top player will pick it up or if players that are really invested in competing will eventually catch up fundamentally. But maybe have the combo game to back it up. But yeah, overall, I would say I've generally thought pretty highly of Sora.
Yeah, I'd say the same for me as well. Early on too, always trying to like lab characters out as much as possible, especially when they come out. And I always love just that start, of a meta for a character. For the most part, kind of looking at his tools, I thought it could be pretty solid. I always thought like kind of just his offstage game is definitely something that could be pretty sick. Once people kind of get better at it. But again, I think that's still a space like, in terms of edgeguarding where there's still more to be explored there. I think a lot of people are still getting better at overall edgeguarding. We're starting to see a bit more people get some consistency there. Obviously, Proto's been someone who comes to mind, kind of where he's at. He's always been someone who's really big on his like elevating his edgeguarding game, but we don't see as many people doing so. I thought that character just off that alone would take time. Also, Nair stuff too. Kind of in my head, once I saw some of the confirms and even saw some stuff, where I'm like, oh wait, this looks like it might be like true. And then over time, people realize, okay, there are some like there's insane amount of hitboxes on that move. Like it's like a melee move. Like it has insane amount of hitboxes.
It really is.
Yeah,
it really is a
wild,
move.
right?
I missed that.
Yeah,
that allows for so much exploration. Yeah, I got you.
It does, man. Like I love that, man, because you just get to go, like you said, like the exploration is there, right? You get to just go and like find out all these nuanced like kind of combos and strings too, right? But of course, with that comes a lot of time associated with it, right? For people to really get to the point where they can utilize it effectively. So I thought this character is just going to take him out of time. It's funny because I saw a lot of people pick him up, and I'm like, I don't think you're going to be good with that character. I don't think you're going to be like. It's just a lot of people picking up the character where it's like you're not. Well, it's just it's funny because everyone always laughs and talks about the top player picking up this character like as their like secondary, and then goes for attempt and then just get bodied, and it's like. You look at where a lot of these guys are, right? And we kind of talked about this in this podcast before. When it comes to certain like characters aren't really good for top players to kind of if they're not easy to kind of pick up, and then they have like it really goes into like known and very easy transferable skills. It's almost kind of silly because they're not going to sit time dedicate. They don't have the time to dedicate to this whole new character and find all these nuances. It just doesn't make sense for them. It's like it's counterproductive when they can be investing in what they already know and be building out for all the tournaments they're going to do back to back, right? We talked about how even like, for example, like Tweak and his Diddy. His Diddy probably wouldn't be at the scale it was if it wasn't for quarantine, right? And I feel like Sora's kind of like one of those characters where it just takes real time. So I would never was surprised, like despite what I thought of the character, seeing a lot of these top players pick up this character and just kind of just get washed with them, right? But it's good to see now we have like Kameme really coming up and exemplifying like where this character can be. We already know in terms of the punish game, it's nowhere near where it can be, but we're seeing some instances where it's like, damn, this character is looking like pretty damn good. But that's where I'm at.
Yeah. I'm a huge Sora believer as well. I'm glad we're all Sora fans. Or, well, maybe Tony is going to break the fact.
I see Tony smiling. I never know if he's against us, man. I never know.
You know, last time we talked about Mega Man and we were all like, oh yeah, Mega Man, Palace Bus, and Tony's like, Mega Man's the best character in the game. Did you guys know he's the best character in the game? And I was like, okay, well, wow, Tony, you have an opinion? No, I'm just kidding. Tony always has opinions. But anyway, let's talk about Sora truthing. I think the reality of Sora is that the character is just like really hard because like he has a resource which per definition just adds so many permutations to any situation, because like you're gonna have to figure out your mid-range with Firaga, with Blizzaga, with Fundaga, and then when you're in like more passive situations, even active situations, you have to decide between using it or saving it. And the choice of using it doesn't just affect the current situation, but also the next situation, and even like a couple situations later. Because like you go to Firaga, that means that you don't have Firaga anymore, but that also means you have to get rid of Fundaga. Which, by the way, like I don't know if this is a hot take, but I think Sora without Fundaga would be like a top tier, like easily. I think Fundaga is such a like huge blind spot in the character. Yeah. Dude, the fact that like if you get the timing right, he does Fundaga, you can literally just like bash through it and just not get hit by the thunder beams. That's insane. Anyway, the point is like he has a resource to manage, which makes him harder than a lot of characters. And then outside of that, he doesn't really have anything that he can kind of like do to just be strong and neutral, right? Like Pikachu does T-Jolt, Diddy plucks Banana, Mifra has Burst Range. All these characters have like just a thing they do in neutral, and then like they base their play around that. Sora is not like that at all. I would say he's closer to a character like Joker, where he has like a lot of different tools that are all like strong in their own right, but they're very much dependent on what your opponent is going to do. So what does that mean? That means that you need a lot, but I mean a lot of matchup experience, because for every matchup you need to understand not just how your resource interacts in this matchup, but also like how your tools that are strong but not overwhelmingly so interact with the opponent's tools, where they have like very unique strengths and weaknesses. So I think that dynamic just requires a lot of knowledge. And then on top of that insane knowledge check, on top of the fact that you cannot rely on any tools, which makes, you know, just generally your decision making a lot harder. On top of all that, he also has an insane execution barrier if you want to get the most out of him, which I'll be fair, like, you know, Kameme doesn't really do. He does a few of the loops against R.O.B especially, but against R.O.B they're like kind of easy.
Yeah.
Point being, it's a lot. Like the character is very, very hard. But like if you look on paper, like he has the tools. His burst range is insane. He has one of the best dash grabs in terms of range. His magic is super, super strong, right? Like Firaga is basically better T-Jolt in a lot of ways. Fundaga can be good off stage. Let's keep it at that. There are some tricks that make it easier to use a neutral. Like you can do a jump back Fundaga, and aerial Fundagas are like spaced closer together, so it's harder to punish. But Blizzaga can like win games, right? You hit a Blizzaga, it deals like what, like 10, 15, and then you hit like an up air and maybe another one. Well, that's like a 50% damage swing, right? Off of one move that has insane disjoint and insane active frames as well. Firaga also combos, right, which makes it even better. And then he has Nair, which is an insane move. He has one of the best up Bs out of shield in the game. Frame 9 with that range, like range comparable to Shulk's up B, plus more kill power, plus a little bit of a mix up afterwards against, you know, depending on the up airs, plus the recovery, right? Like I see a lot of good when I look at Sora, but like you guys mentioned, there is a lot of bad, right? The double jump can be very tricky, and because he's floaty, even his recovery, though it has distance, it can be a little bit rough to utilize correctly, because well, it just takes him a long time to get to places. So yeah, I'm a Sora believer, but I also think he's like, especially in Ultimate's cast where most characters are just like pretty easy, he's one of the few characters that I would call hard. So it's going to take a while before we really see Sora get to where he deserves. But I think if Sora can get where I think he's going to be, he would be a top tier. But I think right now he's not.
So I first want to say that I kind of think of there being three Soras. There's the Sora that we've pretty much seen since just about launch when Zachary won pretty much the first big event with Sora at it. And it, to this day, is still the highest placement that Sora has had. So the
Higher than
since then,
Kameme? Has Kameme not won a tournament?
I don't think he's won a bigger tournament than Zachary.
That is
So
funny.
And that one was stacked too. That tournament was stacked.
it
Yeah.
was a
It
stacked
was
tournament.
stacked. Yeah, he just ran up on them and then just like, all right,
Up
cool.
aired. He up aired.
He
He
clean up aired.
spammed up aired.
He did, and then one time he didn't air up air, and I was like, oh god.
Combos. Sora has combos.
I saw the down tilt
At
smash.
the
I was
time-
like, yo.
At the
Yeah.
time, Zachary pretty much just identified the down tilt follow ups and just identified normals and just played a very safe, grounded game, which you can do with most any sword character. And that was basically what I took from that event was that Zachary could have done this with pretty much any sword character in the game. And I was very not impressed. And I was like, well, maybe they'll figure something out later about the character. And to be fair, there has been a lot discovered about the character's combo roots, potential, etc., etc. However, outside of those potential combo roots, the character hasn't changed much since about the beginning. Like there's niche things here and there, but there aren't revolutionized matchups where they just look completely different on their face. And so that Sora is still here. And then there's the Sora that we're seeing, which is essentially the far distant future Sora, where people land their tool assisted combos and just every character gets blown up and dies. And it's a really strong character. Can't believe it's on a sword character. Still safe on block, going for these 0 to death combos. I don't think we're ever going to see that character. I don't think we're ever going to come close to seeing that character. And it's because there are so many possibilities that are unreactable on Sora's hits that I don't think it's realistic for people to hit confirm on them consistently. I think that there's just so many variables, and I think that the specific hitboxes that you have to get consistently, especially on like the tipper based combos where you need the I think it's like +10 stun or whatever it is effect on those combos, those are so sensitive. And just one straight pop out, and you just go from having a full combo to completely having no combos whatsoever, and they just pop out and there's no finisher. You don't get stage control, and there's real opportunity cost to going for these difficult combos. It's not like you just get such and such a percentage and you just don't get it all the way. It's you lose out on the finisher. And so I think one of the common criticisms of Kameme's Sora is that he consistently would go for his finishers early instead of trying to force small combos. And usually when he did force small combos, if there were pop outs, he would intentionally wait for people to pick a panic option because he's so accustomed to people playing against us that he expects people to treat them like they're fake combos in a lot of his work. So I don't think Sora's going to ever reach that pinnacle. I think he's essentially something of a gimmick character, and I don't think he's very good. I am a Sora doubter. I'll be our hater for the cast.
You're also a Sora truther. Your truth is just different
Yes.
than ours.
There we go. So I don't think Sora is bad. I just don't think he's good. And
what does that entail? Does that entail like, you know, a certain degree of viability or
Well, you don't. No,
like-
Tony doesn't think he's good because of like how you're kind of like predicting the because when you look at characters on paper and stuff, right? Like Task Banjo is crazy if you can do like the infinite bugle gun and stuff, right? But like that's never gonna happen. Like no one's ever gonna be able to do that on command for a 3-day tournament. You know what I mean? Playing against the best players in the world in bracket. You're getting
Smashbox?
nervous. Right,
Smashbox?
Smashbox, right. I think Tony's biggest point.
Nah, I
is,
get you.
Like the how hard Sora is, because when you look at it on paper, obviously a character that touches you once with a sword move and kills you, like it doesn't take a rocket scientist to be like, oh yo, I think that's pretty good. Like obviously it's really good, right? But it's like when you look at the execution and stuff like that, it like really when anyone talks about Sora, it's like, do you think there will eventually be a player out there that can execute all of this and then also do it in bracket when they're fighting up against Roy, Rob, Palu, or whatever, right? Where it's like, oh, these characters can potentially do the same thing with half the effort or 20% of the effort or whatever have you, right? Where it's maybe not zero to death, but it's like, okay, my execution on my combos are way less, but I just got to win neutral 3 or 4 more times or what have you. So
Oh
I,
yeah.
I definitely I can I can agree with Tony there, but I don't know. I think you don't even really have to do the zero to deaths. You know what I mean? I think like what we saw from Kameme is like a what about a year preview. I don't know how much he's put into the character, but like even if you just get for some soft resets when they fall out, and I think that is a valid point of saying that when characters fall out, you get nothing. That sucks because there's other combos where it's like, oh, if I mess up, at least I still have stage control, or at least I have this right. But with
Yeah.
Sora, it's kind of like you kind of reset neutral technically, but it's on them if they do a panic option, right? Like you kind of get a reset if they panic, but if they don't panic, which is why I can kind of see where Tony's like it's more of like feels like a gimmick right now where people are like panicking in certain situations they shouldn't be and all of that other stuff. And even I will say with Sora specifically, his double jump, the worst thing as Sora and like when you're trying to do these like double jump combos is when you try to autopilot it, right? Because the reaction windows are pretty tight. So especially if you're practicing on Wi-Fi or something, you're probably going to autopilot some of the double jump, like the IDJ fairs or nairs. If you don't connect onto something and you just like whip the nair and like say they're just like too far away or like they rolled as you like came down and you autopiloted or something like that, you just double jump into the air, whipped out an aerial, and like you're like shit. Now what do I do? You just double jumped. You're really high in the air, especially if you did it like at center stage. You're like super screwed because Sora usually can reset the ledge, but yeah, I mean, I think that is generally the first topic we have to talk about because that's like the main topic about Sora, and I think that is the main tipping point. Is
Combos.
if well, no, like how do you think Sora is realistic? How hard?
How
Like
viable?
Oh
Yeah.
right, because
yeah.
I think most people can agree that like, well, if someone can do this in bracket, like obviously the character is really strong. I don't think like I don't think anyone will argue that Sora on paper is a very busted character, right? But it's like, do you think the Smash community will get to the point of a player doing that? Especially, I think the hardest part is that there's so many other characters that might not get that much output in damage, but like you do like 5 to 10% of the effort of like a Sora combo, and you get like a good chunk of it. Like it's a pretty standard thing for most, even like mid or bottom tier characters to get
Yeah.
0 to 50
Yeah.
Mhm.
in this game, right? Like
Yeah.
0 to 50 is kind of like, oh wow, pretty good. Like
I
whatever.
think Sora is never worth. Like objectively, this character is not worth it.
I
That
agree
like
with
that
that.
I can agree with. He's not
Yeah.
worth like he is a lot of work, but I think like if you like the character a lot because he has a very unique play style and you want to push him, then even without like the full combos, he's still very viable. He's just not worth putting like the time versus what you get out of it is just like very very disjointed. I kind of like I play Shulk, right? Shulk is also like a character that you invest a lot of effort in, but like what you get in return is like very, very much worth it, which is I think something that Sora doesn't really. I think it's very similar to a Hero in a lot of ways, right? Hero also requires a lot of effort, which people might disagree with me on, but I think the character has a lot of permutations, a lot of strategy that's very flexible. You need a lot of experience, also no like dominant tools, blah blah blah. And what you get out of it is like a character that's like is pretty good, but like not really like a top tier. So he's never worth it. But like, so for combos, like whenever I look at like hard combos that are like really, really hard, I personally like compare it to El Fuerte from Street Fighter 4, who had a 1 frame Link Infinite that was just like, and every rep was 1 frame, every rep 1 frame. And what you saw, like right now, the players who are still playing can do the infinite until you die, most of the times. But back then, of course, it wasn't really realistic, which is, like, what is it, 15 years ago, maybe more. And what you saw is that people would do like 2 or 3 reps and then finish the combo. And I think for Sora you can see a very similar thing, and the difference is like maybe Kameme does like a short combo and gets like let's say 30, you add a rep or two and you can bring that up to like 45, which is a huge like that's a huge swing in percent, right? Because you're getting 1.5 times your damage output for 2 loops. And I think it is realistic for people to get to the point where they can get that type of damage output, and I think that is enough for Sora to be a good character personally. But that's like is very like intuition, right? Like where do you draw the line between what is good enough for this character to be viable? And that's where I kind of like. So to me, the future of Sora is not like the combos at all. I think the combos are like they're like decently important, and you should definitely like lab them and get good at them if you want to succeed with Sora. But I think like the spell management is way more of an important talking point. That even if we look at Kameme, like Kameme plays a very like straightforward Sora. He has not really like integrated spells into his neutral very well. You can definitely notice there's a moment where he's like, oh, I'm going to do spells. And then there's a moment where he's going to be like, oh, I'm going to play fundamentals, which I notice because that's what choke players do as well. It's like, oh, I'm going to play arts and I'm going to play fundamentals. It's the same thing. And that's like the hard part because you got to play fundamentals while also integrating like these very specific things that are not like fundamental skills. They're very like specialized pieces of knowledge. And I think like I think Kameme can reach even greater heights in any Sora with just like proper spell management, because again I think Firaga and Blizzaga are both absolutely ludicrous spells.
Yeah, and I definitely gotta agree with that, man. Yeah, man. But like, dude, like, yeah, Firaga and Blizzaga are so freaking stupid. Like, dude, the fact that like Faraga is just like, oh well, I do whatever. Like, hit your shield, I don't care. It combos, cool.
Plus, it's plus on shield.
Plus. Yeah,
he can
like,
do the Pikachu T-Jolt thing where he like throws it out and then grabs you if you shield it, which is not like not on reaction, but like just having that as a true shield combo is something that no other
on hit or on block. I grab you and that's dope. Like you know, like it's wild, right? And I definitely agree with that, man. That like definitely his spells are so insane, and I think that it really is the spells plus the combo game that he has that makes the character like insane, in my opinion. In tandem with like the edgeguarding side. I do think that when we talk about Sora's combo game, I think that it's important for people to like realize too that some of these combos that are strong enough aren't as like they're hard, but they're not in the threshold of a task. Like it's not like, oh well, this is like there's no world in which someone's going to do this, right? And I think that's one of the biggest things. Like if you are able to do, you know, like a solid amount of damage, you're doing like, I mean, Ramses was already talking about it, right? Where you're doing a 30 to the 40 or whatever, right? And then you get a mix up and stuff afterwards. That is powerful. And the thing about it is like, if you, it's not something where you can just like, oh, I have this, like if I go and air dodge here, there's a lot of ways where he can still chase that, right? If I'm going to go and double jump here, if he's just doing this combo, he's catching your double jump, right? So that doesn't matter, right? Even there. So I think you got to look at some of these solid combos plus what he can do out of a mix-up, even if he's not getting those guaranteed combos. And then you start to see that this character does do a pretty solid amount of damage, right? And still has these tools that I need to be like cognizant of, where I am blending that into my overall, the fact that I'm going to have these like neutral tools, right? I'm going to have my Eftel, I'm going to have my Nair, I'm going to have these things, I'm dashing around, and like I have my dash attack, right? It was like a pretty solid dash attack, right? And then it's like, oh, like I have that in tandem with my dash grab, and they have to respect, you know, if I have like Firaga on at that time with all those things, that is a very potent character. Like in that moment, like he becomes insanely strong, right? I know we talked about Thundaga not being the best. I do think that Thundaga, for all its shortcomings, it's still solid because of how strong it can be on edgeguarding on a character who has strong edgeguarding tools. So it's not the best tool in a vacuum, but in tandem with a character who has all these tools, you have to respect it, right? Because if you go and try to weave around this move when you're off stage, then Ion reaction can try to fair you across there and get some extra damage, right? Or if you're a fast faller, then I can go for the fair one stuff that is really solid against a lot of fast fallers, and they have to respect. Oh, by the way, I just have some stupid broken counter too that you have to respect in these certain situations. In tandem with this FPU, of course, has a great hitbox.
And forward tilt 2 framing. Like he has a lot of offstage pressure.
Absolutely. And so I think that is something that can be controlled, right? That's something that is not just stuck in a combo game. I do think that there's some of his combo game that is like it's nigh unreactable. Like yes, technically it's possible, but it's hard there. But he does have a substantial enough about a substantial amount of his combo game that is strong enough and I think viable enough for someone to be consistent at and do some damage there. We're not seeing it yet from most people, but I do believe it's there. I don't believe he's the 20xx, whatever you want to call it, dude. Like, 20x hollow, 20 hollow bastion, whatever you want to call it, dude. Like, I think it's actually in a realm of possibility. So that's how I feel about the character overall. I just don't think that. I think we all understand that there's a lot of characters that can do the same things that Sora can do for less work, and that's always going to be a thing. I don't think there's someone who is like outside of very few people. Obviously, Kameme be one of there's very few people who are going to invest in this character who have the talent as a player and have the time as a player to do this. Most going back to what we were talking about before. Most top players are not going to have the time to invest in this character that's going to give them returns that they probably already have with the character they already play. There's just no point for them if you're looking at it from a career point of view. And there's definitely characters that hit that kind of mark, right? In fighting games where it's like, this character is really, really good, but now we're in the age of esports where it's like, if someone is that good, then they're probably playing professionally. If I'm playing professionally, am I wasting my time like this? No.
Yeah.
But that's really this kind of sad thing about the character, like if you're looking at it from a player point of view, yes, you know what I mean, but it just doesn't. It usually just doesn't happen that way, especially when the return is low top tier.
I get what you mean. If this was League of Legends, no one would play Sora. It's just not worth it.
Free.
But because we're maybe 25 to 50% grassroots still, kind of. A lot of people are like, okay, I love this character, but that's something that we see. Like we talked about this with on the secondary episode where we talked about how people are just not ruthless enough. This is part of that, right? Like if you're Kameme and you actually want to win, then you pick a top three. You're playing Aegis, you're playing Joker, you're playing Pikachu, but that's not the only consideration, right? There's Sora. Sora is not the best choice. So, yeah, I think we can all agree that Sora is not worth it if your only goal is to just win as efficiently and ruthlessly as possible. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tony. To you, that just means that the character is not. That the character is kind of bad, or are there other considerations for your judgment call here?
So if I thought the character was bad, I would say that people who are playing the character and like the character should probably reconsider playing the character. But I think if you're playing Sora because you like Sora, you're fine. You don't need to drop Sora. You'll be fine going forward. But if you are already working toward a PGR level and that's your goal or something like that, then you don't need to start thinking about maybe I should be picking up Sora right now. That is there's two reasons that's not correct. The first is because Sora is not a good pocket character. He's not working. Sora is not a good pocket character. And then second is you are probably not going to be switching to a better character than whatever character has gotten you this far into the game so far. And if he is better, then it's not enough to justify dropping your character. So I don't think he's going to be changing players' picks. The people who like Sora are going to keep playing Sora, and that's fine. And I don't think that people who aren't playing Sora should start. So that's what I meant, essentially.
Yeah,
that's fair. No, that's something we can all agree on, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think we're all in agreement, right? We're just tying in Tony. I know you're definitely the nuance. Tony's you know what? That right now doesn't work. Useless, trash. Right? It's understandable. It's all understandable, and it sucks that the character's in that kind of weird spot where it's they're not just this trash character where it's all right, we already know, right? But it's in this way where I think even that's why some people may kind of be drawn to the character. I mean, obviously the character is extremely popular, right? And so when you go to what you were saying, Rams, in terms of the grassroots, people are just going to they want to play the character that they love. And this is a character that's been requested since the dawn of time in terms of Smash Brothers. People have been waiting for this character to come through, and they're excited. And it's you see this character who intrinsically has all these very solid tools that you can see on paper, and you're dude, I want to try, and I want to invest. right? But we just see time and time again where it's like it's not worth it, and a lot of people just don't even have the time to even get to a point where you can even question that. And I think some people, they still believe that they see the task stuff and they still believe that there's a world where I'm going to be the first one to show you that Sora can do this. Everyone wants to be the first one, everyone wants to be the protagonist.
If they have that attitude, then Sora sits, because Sora's the same.
Exactly, because the Kingdom Hearts character.
I can do it.
Can do it. Yeah, exactly. So like, it makes complete
Destiny
sense.
Island.
I know. What a clown. Destiny Island. Reality Stone this guy, dude. Get him out of here.
You can't do
I want
the
to go ahead
combos.
and bring
Oh my God.
that up real quick. A lot of people are under the impression that Kameme wasn't getting his combos. He was getting his combos. His combos aren't gonna get wildly better. He doesn't need your combos, and people need to understand that trying to combo Light and Sonics is not like trying to combo the CPU in training mode. You're not going to be in control of when you get these combo starters, because you're going to be swinging and hope that they run into it and don't hit you first. And you just can't set up your swings the way you can versus lesser players versus the non-players. Like, people need to understand that Sora combos in practice at that level are extremely more difficult than they are at whatever you're currently practicing them.
Yeah.
So
Kameme still does get his advanced combos. I want to be clear on that. He just gets them on the less difficult positions and characters. Like, I think my first time seeing Kameme Sora was actually seeing him almost zero to death the Hero's Bowser in Japan. If you didn't know, a Hero is probably the best Bowser on the planet. So so he's still able to get those pickup hits, and he's able to carry them, and he's been able to do so for quite some time. So if he was already at that point on the easy characters and he's still doing the same combos he was versus like the midweights, the floaties and such, I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. I think a lot of people saw his play and thought, wow, that's what Sora can do without the combos. Just think of what he's going to do next month. That's not happening.
That's what everyone thinks, man. Yeah. I will say, I forgot to mention this too, and this kind of leads to why I think a lot of his combos are, even though they're going to be really hard, and there's going to be some that are kind of out of the threshold of like human capacity, right? Like, it's just because they're unreactable, all those kind of things. There's some that are solid combos that are good, and part of the reason is because it, like, essentially he has aerial rekkas, right? That's where his combos are coming from. So there are certain situations where you can reposition yourself to still get a solid combo or a strong combo versus, like, if it's just like, oh, well, too late. I tried to, it happened now. I got the hit and it happened now. And if you don't know what you're going to do, then you're screwed, right? So I do think that's why I lean a bit more to Sora's combo game, like, being strong and not just being this whole like dream world, mainly because of that.
So I have an interesting topic that I think to me is very relevant, but I especially want to hear what Charles has to say about this, because you coached Void and Tweak, who are two of the players that this applies to most. The idea of how you value the degree of basically mental resources that a character takes. So Sora, we talk about like his combos, like that stuff is all like, theoretical, but like practically something that we kind of discussed at the beginning of the session is how he has like a very well-rounded tool set. However, because he doesn't have like a dominant, like he doesn't like run up and Diddy banana at you, right? Or run a Roy near you. So he often spends more mental energy because he plays around his opponent. It's more like information based. He kind of like set the pace basically, which requires more like mental energy, mental resources. And that is like a bit of power budget that is often like extremely understated, because it's a very personal thing, right? It's like not like a limitation of the character, but it's a limitation of us as humans. And what you can see is that a character like R.O.B, well, on paper has a lot of like matchups that he struggles with. In practice, like by the time you get to winter semis, R.O.B mains have been using like 10% of their brain capacity because the character is just like straightforward. Whereas like your local like Joker player, he's running on full tilt because like Joker, especially base Joker, like requires a lot of like mental resources to play. And it's similar for Sora where he requires a lot of mental resources to play. And I feel like for Tweak that's like a thing because of the way he plays, right? Because he plays very deliberate, which naturally requires a lot of mental resources. So he has to kind of like manage that throughout the bracket. And then on top of that, a character like Sephiroth has a very similar dynamic where he's just a very deliberate character. And then Void plays Sheik, who also has like a very similar thing where like Sheik generally like Sheik gets to set the pace more, but she also has to play around way more than the average character because of just like how her neutral works. So I was just wondering, Charles, what is your take on like that dynamic in terms of like just the limitations of us as humans and how you consider that going into maining a character?
Yeah, for sure. I think, I mean, obviously, there's a bunch of things outside of the game that you can kind of problem solve and stuff like that. Like, oh, I mean, do you drink coffee? Are you eating like I know for me, I suggest a lot of players don't want to eat too much, but you should still eat something, right? Like maybe a banana or a yogurt or something small just to have, because obviously your body needs energy, but you also don't want to consume too much food because then you're digesting, and digesting takes like your body's energy, right? So you don't want to do have too much, but you still want to have some kind of food. So obviously, like all the outside stuff to consider, right? Stay hydrated, yada yada. But then when it comes to in the game, that's why I think even for players like Tweak and Void, cutting things short is something that's pretty important. That's why even for Kameme, like the max amount of loops you'd see him do is maybe like one extra rep, right? Maybe two against like a R.O.B or something like that, or someone a little easier. But it's like I think for those kind of characters like Sheik and Diddy, you kind of have the out or the mindset, and that's another thing to consider about Summit, where like you are playing all weekend and it's exhausting, but you're not competing. Like the hours of competition is way less. The amount of like games I would assume is less than a really large bracket like Genesis or something like that, right? I mean, there's like the side events and stuff like that, but it just completely like knowing your environment, right? How much competition are you gonna go throughout this weekend and kind of conserve yourself for that? And even in certain like situations where it's like, oh, I can like go for this hard to execute combo, or I can just kind of use it as a conditioning tool, go for the reset, right? Like just kind of like, okay, I'm not gonna go for this one frame link, kind of like how you're talking about with Smash or not Smash 4, but Street Fighter 4 with the Alfuete players, right? Where they would like in the beginning of the meta, they'll go one or two reps and then just finish off the combo, right? Because it's like, well, is this like grand finals? Is this the final stretch? Are you like how much gas do you have in the tank, right? And I think as a player, or if you're coaching anyone, or if you're just a player in itself, you know your own stamina the best, and even trying to figure out signs. And this is, I guess, kind of like on a deeper topic, but this is actually something I talk to with Avoid like a lot to this day, is like when you're playing and you have to know yourself to the point where it's like, oh, I start doing X, Y, and Z when I get tired. I start doing X, Y, and Z when I get tilted. When I start feeling these things, and then it's like, then I do A, B, and C when I'm on tilt. Then I do A, B, and C when I'm out of fuel. Right? Like
Right.
you need to know as a player, like when you are there's different phases of like good or bad things, right? Man, when I'm feeling like on point, I notice I do this X, Y, and Z. Or when I feel like I'm starting to dial in and focus, I notice these trends. Like you're trying to trend all this data to the point where you can stop the issue, right? And that's something that as a coach I can't like be like, oh my god, I see like Voider Tweak doing X, Y, and Z. Like run up on stage and tell them like you can't do, or you used to be able to
Yeah.
do that with mid-side coaching, but now you can't do that shit anymore. So um, you really want to establish to as a player, like, oh, if I man I notice like I start like just guessing a lot with dash attack when I feel frustrated. Like this is just like from my own experience, but like i I would start dash attacking a lot with Fox when I get frustrated in neutral, because I'm like, I'm over it, I'm tired, like I'm like I just start
You want it to
guessing.
end. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So it's like That's
Yeah.
something I know that I do, and that's like signs to me as a player where I'm like, oh, I'm getting like tired or tilted or like
Fatigued. Yeah,
frustration
I
or
get
stuff.
you.
So there's always signs, and even like your like there's signs in your body language, there's signs in your thought process. You know what I mean? Like it, obviously, like if you start getting irritated, like that's something that's like you're probably about to go on tilt, right? Stuff like that. So kind of noticing those factors and stopping something before it happens or adjusting to something, because at the end of the day stamina is just a resource, right? So it's like, oh
Yep.
shit, I'm like starting to run out, like I gotta do these tournament combos, like I have to cut things short, and I have to, like, because fundamentals always come first, right? So it's like I need
Yeah.
to like reserve this amount of stamina for fundies, and like I don't have the stamina to like do these crazy combos anymore for the rest of the bracket even, right? And stuff like that. And then there's even like last stand scenarios where you're like, I'm in losers bracket, and I'm like, I'm gonna be real. Even if I win this one, I don't have enough stamina to beat the next guy. But I'm putting all my stamina into this one match just to get that one placement higher, right? But you know you're fucked in the next match. Like you'll give it a whirl, obviously, but like even
I
stamina
think every
management.
good player has been there, where they're like,
Yeah,
I know I cannot make this run, and then like you said, it's like a last time, but that's like a really like messed up situation, because like imagine you're like playing for fifth, and like one player knows if they manage the stamina they can get to like, you know, grand finals, and the other player's like, I just give it my all here. Then the player who would be able to make it to grand finals has to adjust their power levels as well,
That's
and then
the
they
game, right?
get dragged down.
I love
Dude,
that. I
yeah,
love
but
that.
that's the stuff that you don't see. Like,
Yep.
I love that you mentioned that, Charles, because that's the stuff that, like, if you're a viewer, you would not think about that. It's like an esoteric experience. It's when you get there, you understand, but before you get there, you would never think about it.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the biggest things too. I think in competition, right? And even for me, where like when I look at from like even like the sportive side, right, and like my personal experience, like where it's like, all right, like it makes so much sense in sports. Like, am I running out of gas here, right? And a lot of times people don't think of that because you're like, oh, well, you're playing the game, right? Like so, and you have it. I mean, obviously the character can run around all day, right? But are you going to be able to execute in that way, or is your mindset going to be there? And I mean, and I know we're kind of laughing about this in a different way at Summit, but Charles, I know we're talking about like having meter, right? We're talking about like being supercharged, right?
okay, yeah.
And like, yeah, but like that's a real thing, right? That is a very real thing. Right? When you know when you are in the zone or not, and like when you're able to actually like, I have the capacity to do this, right? Now I have now unlocked where like, you know what? I probably should go for my tech chases right now because I'm on point. I can jam this versus like, oh, I'm so exhausted right here. If I go for this doesn't even make sense. I might as well just cash out with the simple things because me trying to go for this read when my brain's off, no, that's just dumb, right? And it is something that is very, very big in competition. Knowing like yes, this X player may be like super fast, right? This guy may be one of the fastest people, on the field, but if he's tired and exhausted, way he's no longer the fastest person, right? It could be like if I'm exhausted, right, or if like whatever reason, like, and I can't move the way I move, like, dude, this lineman, like, speaking from like football, right? This lineman could be faster than me at this point in time, despite me being a running back, because at the end of the day, like, I don't have that stamina right now. And being able to conserve that, and knowing when you need to allocate like all that stamina, or you need to like kind of like tone it down, all things is absolutely huge. And I think going back to what like Ramsey was talking about originally, when you do have a character like Sora, right? When you have this kind of game plan where a lot of it is contingent on how your opponent's playing in all these ways, it is very, very taxing, and it's also a character it takes time to learn. And we've also talked about this too. This is another facet of that. You also don't have as many opportunities because you are light as hell. That's the same reason, in my opinion, where a long time we talked about this with Mewtwo. Same kind of thing, where if you're a new character and you're going against this whole spectrum of, like, you were the last character, right? So every other character has had more time than you. Every character, right? And now you were the lightest, like you were one of the lightest characters, right? So like you have this whole thing where you don't get as many opportunities. You as a character just take more mental stamina playing within the game. You take more time just to learn, right? There's all these factors that really go against Sora getting to the level that it needs to be a viable threat. And that's just the reality of the situation.
Yeah, something that I recommend to the higher level players that I coach is that you should always ask yourself, like, do I need this? Right? Like, in a lot of ways, right? Like, do I need to take a risk in this ledge trap, or can I win without doing that? Do I need to start like dialing in, or can I win without doing that? And I think the struggle with Sora is that because he doesn't have like an easy fallback tool outside of Firaga, which is very temporary. You almost always need some degree of mental energy. And I think that is what sets him apart from other characters that are also hard but still viable. If you think about something like, again, I'm going to use Shulk as a reference because, sword characters with resources. Shulk, like as Shulk, I can camp and use speed art, which is like of course I can use a lot of mental energy to get more out of that, but I can also say like, okay, well, you know what? This round I'm just going to camp and use speed art and I'll get through the round just fine. But for Sora, there is no camp and speed art. You're always tuned in to a certain degree. And I think that is what is holding a lot of Sora players back as well. Just like all of that combined together with the fact that, like if you want to beat a decent player, you're going to have to use a larger degree of mental energy. And there is no do I need this? You need it. That's like the core of the character. And I think that's something that might change as we improve as humans within the realm of Smash Ultimate. It's going to be very dependent on if we're going to get Smash Ultimate Deluxe and live for another 5 to 10 years. But yeah, I think to me it's very interesting because it's a topic that people don't talk about, and to me it's very personal to me because I compete with Shulk at a high level, which means that stamina management and thinking about where can I cut corners while still succeeding is a very hard thing. And one of the hardest and that's just me personally, one of the biggest heartbreaks is losing in an event while still having gas in the tank, because you're like, I could have freaking used that, man. I could have blown it all and ignited like a star, but then you burn out, of course. But yeah, I always feel like that is very interesting, and that's something that I see in Sora, which is also why I think Sora is a very interesting character, because when you watch Sora, it's not just about the things Sora does, but it's a very personal character. A lot of the person themselves is represented in the decisions that Sora makes, which I think is also very rare in this game, and a large reason why people gravitate to the character. So yeah, I'm a huge Sora fan. I like the character a lot. Even though I never played Kingdom Hearts, I like his iteration of Smash a lot.
My opinion on bracket preparation on this topic is that if you go in prepared enough to basically crush the opponent, then one of the best ways to conserve your energy is to just crush them so fast that you don't have to use it very long. So big fan of 2-0s and 3-0s to go ahead and close out your bracket. That way you can conserve things that way while also still giving your opponent full strength. That way you don't open yourself to getting reversal because they burn themselves out faster.
Do you think it's better to go super hard in 3-0 or to play more autopilot and possibly play more games?
I think it depends on the circumstances. Maybe it's different for Kameme Sora, but I was under the impression that he basically had his gameplay down so that he could essentially remain calm by having just most of his set play. And so I perceived most of his neutral, most of his advantage, and most of his disadvantage as being pretty set play or pretty defined. And I think that that's the way most of the players who were also at that in those finals with him were in a similar level, where they generally try to. I know that Light, for example, likes to feel out the opponent more at the beginning and then crush them, and then Sonic tries to just crush them and then counter adapt if they do make it past the game 3, and then he'll just basically save his early wins for game 5, such and such. So I think they're all valid. I don't think that there's a single correct answer, but that's my personal preference, is just to go in ready to crush everybody. That way you aren't as worried about variance because you're going to have the extra room in your mind to focus on that.
Do you think Sora is... Oh,
no, you had first.
Okay. Do you think Sora is capable of crushing at the top level of the meta right now?
I I'm not under that impression. I'm under the
I
impression
think
that
that's fair.
Kameme was more of he was very much playing the patience game for most of his sets. Very
Big
focused
agree.
around just prolonging each engagement and taxing his opponent. And then if his opponent wasn't willing to play the slow game with him, then they lost on the spot. And I think Light was the only real exception to that.
And I think Sora kind of has to do that. Like the character, like unless you get the combos down, which we can all agree is like not super realistic. I think like Sora's game pace naturally tends towards a slow choke rather than just like dominance. And again, that kind of like plays into the human aspect of the meta of the character, where yes, the character can technically do this, but can a human do this for an entire bracket? Can you go in without crushing your opponents and play that slow game the entire way through? And yeah, I think that is the main reason why I am not like a Sora believer at like the super top level right now. But I'm an optimist. I think it's possible. It's possible, but it's going to require a lot of dedication. Like Bam said, like someone who does this full time and is committed to like really figuring out Sora. It's in the cards, but the cards are sparse.
Well, I will note that Kameme had some very rewarding combo substitutes, or he was playing against a character like R.O.B that got comboed for free. But like a multiple top Nesses were in his bracket. So it's not that he didn't. It's not that the Ness is a free matchup for Sora so much as that I think Sora tends to counter the way top US Nesses tend to play. For I know one thing that comes to mind is that his counter actually works on Nesses up B because it just kicks Ness out of his invulnerability on it and just says you're now getting hit by counter, you're dead at 0. So like having those little high reward situations crop up to essentially shorten the time he has to play his super safe, super diligent neutral helped. And then of course him having Gact as a frequent bracket encounter and presumably practice partner also helps prepare him. So I think Kameme's bracket was very well suited for his skill set and also for his preparation for the event that I know of. So that Bam, what were you gonna say?
I mean, I was just gonna say, and it's funny enough, you guys kind of like went into some of it already, but going back to what I was originally talking about, I really think the advancement for Sora is going to be an edgeguarding game because I do think that's where you can get these early kills, right? And you're talking about it, right? The fact that he had that kind of bracket that really suited that, so he's able to. Because I think for Sora, outside of the combo game, the super high execution combo game, I think it's going to be it's edge guarding, and he has a lot of tools there where he can get some early kills, and that's where he can kind of run some people over. If you don't know what to do in this situation, you're getting countered and you're dying really early, right? Or you're getting hit with Blizzaga off stage, or he's doing the fair one stuff, bringing you down to a point where now you have very little resources and he can punish you heavily for that. And I do believe that part of Sora's game plan, if people get more, if they flesh that out more, I do believe that's where he can kind of rob some of these characters essentially and get some of these early kills and actually kind of blow past people versus doing the, what we talked about, let's quote unquote the slow choke, right, as it were, as a character. That to me is kind of his X factor outside of the combo game, and I do believe that people really do need to take time to look at that, because that is something that's more practical in my eyes than the combo game. I cannot stress this enough. Like, he has a lot of tools to cover people's recoveries, a lot of recoveries across the board because his counter is so potent in tandem with his magic spells and his ranges. And having those Rekkas too, really putting a lot of characters in situations where they just gotta hold the L. I can hit some of these characters off stage. Well, dude, what's up, dude? I hit you with R1, dude. What are you gonna do? You're gonna swing at me too and just die, or am I just gonna carry you off or whatever? So that's the big thing for me, where I think that's gonna be the difference maker for this character being a place where they really can actually provide some damage in the meta. But regardless, I do think that's something still that's going to take some time. I just think that's more practical than sometimes some of these super these top level combos, and thinking that's going to be what's going to take you to win all these tournaments.
people don't talk about it enough either, but like being floaty is also like super good off stage. I don't know,
Very
like
good.
Smash 4 Rosalina, you guys remember that? She would jump off stage, hang in the air for like
Just watch you.
4 seconds, and she just doesn't fall. She doesn't
Yeah.
fall, and then she down airs you when you die. And like
Yeah.
Sora has, it's super floaty, and he can reset like his air speed or his fall speed with his spells, right? Because like your fall kind of like gradually accelerates, right? But when you use a spell, you stall, and then you have to accelerate your fall again. So he has like basically like a pseudo peach float to just like threaten an area for a huge amount of time, and then he has a nair and the fair and the down air as well, from which he can recover, and the counter, like you guys mentioned. So and he could, yeah, the B, the Fandaga, he has so many tools off stage. So I would agree with Bam. I think there's a lot to be explored off stage for sure.
Yeah, and I think also with edge guarding to get stocks, it's it's something that, in my opinion, takes less stamina to do than like a zero death, right? Where it's like, okay, because the way I look at it is your character has win conditions, right? And usually win conditions overlap with how you get stocks. To win the game, you need to take stocks. Obviously, you need to do damage to take stocks, so that's part of the equation. But generally, the hardest thing to do at top level Smash is usually take stocks. So I mean, if we see the edge guarding really advance for Sora, that could be a really big deal. And I think Kameme also already does things that kind of conserves his energy. I mean, for the most part, like when you really look at it, most of his neutral was mainly neutral air, right? Like obviously there was mix-ups, but it was like a short hop rising nair. Does he swing the second nair? The second nair hits like pretty low to the ground, right? Does he just fast fall it back down because you're respecting the nair? A lot of it was simple in the fact that he used a lot of nair, but there was a lot of layers to the nair that kind of brought it, from there. And nair, especially rising nair, if you hit a rising nair, you have forever to get ready for the confirm, right? Like rising nair one, oh, I hit it, then into the nair two, then into the, like, depending if they're floaty or fast volley, it's like, oh, okay, so I hit nair one, into the nair two, IDJ, oh, you're floaty, IDJ nair, nair two, up smash or up tilt or whatever you want, right, for damage and stuff. And so I think Kameme also kind of understands, like, obviously Fundies always come first, right? But kind of understands ways to take some of these shortcuts for stamina, where it's like, okay, well, I'm trying to find this balance. I don't want to, go over here and try to be like a task bot for, a whole entire weekend, because that's not even possible. But what ways can I cut corners in neutral and in terms of you know confirms and damage output and stuff like that. And you know getting a counter off stage at 50 definitely saves you a lot of energy on that stock, right? Like, oh, cool, I got him off stage and then countered him, sick. And I mean, it's similar to a way where Sephiroth felt strong, in a sense where it's like, oh, this character's off stage is crazy, like the fair, the counter, yada yada, right? But again, it's like this, I feel like Sora and Sephiroth are so easy to compare, not in sense of playstyle, but in sense of like they have like these ridiculously glaring weaknesses, and it's like, well, is this character worth? I do think Sora is a better character than Sephiroth, but
Really?
yes, I do think so.
Okay.
But
Interesting.
it and I know we've talked so much about Sephiroth. I just hate how Sephiroth's like design. I just feel like you have to take so much risk with Sephiroth, whereas Sora, you just generally have. I feel like you have to take way less risk with Sora, but with Sephiroth, it feels like you have to take way more risk, and it's on a character that is very tall and like extremely light. I know Sora's like light, but Sephiroth's extremely light, extremely tall, and there's so many characters in the roster that can kill Sephiroth off of confirms or straight hits before he even gets wing. And then it's just like, well, I mean, that's like what makes your character good, right? At least Sora's the same strength at 0, at 100, at 150. You know what I mean? And like having one of your main weaknesses being juggled does suck, but Sora is a character that can reset to ledge pretty easily as long as you get out of said juggle situation. But I mean, obviously, there's a lot of top tiers that are just strong in juggling and stuff like that. So it's going to suck, but I just feel like Sora is so much more well rounded, and it's so hilarious because I actually wanted to talk about more about the spells. I think on release, I thought Thundaga was the best spell. I was like, man, this spell is crazy. Like, holy moly, you know what I mean? But now I think it's the worst. Like, if that spell didn't exist, Sora would jump up a lot. because
Easily.
his neutral would be so strong. If you were just switching between Fire and Blizzard or Fire Aga and
I'd be
Blizzaga,
so
it
broken,
would
dude.
be
It would be
insane.
insane.
Because and you saw Kameme. If obviously if you guys watch them, you notice Kameme burning the Thunder in between stocks. Like if he had Thunder and he got a KO,
Yeah.
he would just Thunder just to like get it off the table, right? Because realistically, Thunder, especially like I feel like Sora, it's so nice and neutral if you fight against a character that can't punish Thundaga on reaction. But as we get higher in the bracket, you fight faster characters because speed is a very important aspect in Smash. And we saw against Sonics, we saw against Light, we saw against a lot of players that he could not use that move. Like Sonics would be almost all the way across the stage or like halfway across the
And
stage.
run up on him. Hey, what up?
Bro,
Yeah.
and then he would like I know Kameme tested the waters a couple times where Kameme was like, "Hell, like I'll throw it out and see." And then you like Thundaga, and then just Sonic's like, vroom, and like just like gets
I love
underneath
Sonic.
it, and then like the
Just
Thunder's
run
like
up on
falling
cats,
down,
dude.
and Sonic's already like grabbing him or dash tagging him. It's like
It's
okay,
stupid.
So funny.
never
It's so
don't
funny.
ever disrespect my neutral. Like I feel like that was like low key disrespectful. Like you don't think I can react to this, and I'm playing Sonic? Like that's crazy. Let me hit you.
The worst thing is about Fundaga is that people can fall out of it consistently as well.
Yep,
Like
that's
certain DIs
the
just
big thing
fall.
to me.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the sweet spot is in the final one, right? So like if you fall out of any of the previous ones, it's just like a literally useless move. I actually I've
unless
seen someone get
offstage.
gimped by it because
Yep.
if it's off stage, you DI down, you get like semi spiked.
Yeah,
That's
and you
all
just
right.
die. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so off stage, sometimes you want to take the hit, but on stage, you can DI down, tech it, and just punish on hit, which is actually like insane.
Right. It's just a move that you need time to set up. Right?
Sucks. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
we're-
it's only good off stage, man. Like
Yeah.
it's straight up. Like that move is just off stage only. But then the other spells are literally can be used like for anything. Like like I can use it wherever I need to use it.
Firaga especially. Blizzaga is more
Yeah.
like X Factor, but Firaga is like literally like if he had perma Firaga, I think that would be one of the best like neutral specials in the game.
Oh, free. No, that's not even a question. That move is so stupid.
Blizzaga is just DLC Yoshi neutral B, the Egglay.
does a lot of shit.
I was
damage.
thinking DLC Ivysaur forward tilt, but I think it's similar.
It's very unsafe on block. I will say that. Like you saw so many players like
Is
drop.
it?
Yeah, it's or that's what it felt like. I felt like a lot of
Which
It's
one?
it's like
Blizzaga?
minus 13. It's like minus 13.
really because I swear I was watching like Sharp do like drop shield down tilt as Sheik, and like
I think that's just Kameme mashing. I'm pretty sure that move is relatively safe. Like I know Ashoka can up-B it, but like if you drop your shield,
Blizzaga
it should
is
be too
safe.
late.
Is that what you
Blizzaga
guys
is
are talking
safe.
about? Yeah, yeah.
Unless
Uh,
it's up close, then it can be grabmed.
I can
If it's
definitely-
up
Yeah,
close,
no.
it can be grabbed.
At proper ranges, that move is safe.
oh well, right.
Because that
right.
the range is also like it's hella. It's like more disjointed than the cone actually shows you.
Oh,
But
right.
they're
Oh,
like
yeah, yeah,
actually, yeah, which is stupid.
You have to,
Like,
you have to space
like-
it correctly.
And
I know
also
like
shield
Fox,
stabs.
It does shield step very
Yes.
very easily.
Yes.
but like calling it safe is like there's so much context to it because I know for a
That's
fact
true, that's
Fox,
true.
Fox can
Right.
up smash that for free. Like I
Yeah,
can be like
easily.
I can be
Range
like
at-
daydreaming and be like
Yeah.
oh okay like let me up
Yeah.
smash it.
At tipper range, that move is safe.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'll say that.
Yeah.
Talking about save moves. Final topic for me, dude. Sora smash attacks are insane. His down tilt seems pretty safe. It's kind of like Corrin down tilt where it like seems safe, but it's not really safe. Like minus 16 ish, which is like that's all right if you space it. His forward smash is minus 17 with insane shield pushback. That means like if you drop your shield after he forward smashes, your move needs to be like frame 4, which means that you need to have like Greninja dash attack or something, and even then it's like a tight window. Which is, I think, the issue with Sora in a lot of cases is that he kind of like struggles to kill early. He has very little X factor in that regard, right? He has the offstage pressure potentially, but like his up air is good, but it kills at like 130, some hitboxes even later. And outside of that, he doesn't really have like an accessible kill move that will hit in neutral. I feel like, and that's where like forward smash is super big because it's relatively low risk. Minus 17 is very, very, very safe for a smash attack. And he also has, which I think this move is super underrated, but it's also very niche. His up smash is a grounded move that hits full hops, which is absolutely fucking insane. Having a grounded move that hits full hops. You guys ever see Leo play Byleth? He's like, oh, you full hopped, reactionary up B, and he drags you down with Byleth, right? It's not that egregious with Sora up smash, but just being able to kill someone super early for full hopping from the ground is pretty darn good with a decent scoop on top. So like, I think like another point in terms of Sora being hard to play is that like for X Factor, like you don't really like naturally find yourself in these X Factor situations. Like, you know, Pikachu does a bridge and then you die, or like he gets you off stage and then the edge guard is relatively straightforward, or Joker has Arsene, hits you like twice, you die. You know, Mario Waft, Aegis goes to Pyra, kills you with 4 till at like 100, or like down air at 50. Sora doesn't really have that, so needs to invest a little bit more in information gathering, but then the smashes to capitalize on that are insane. Like actual insanity. Down smash has invincibility too and is pretty safe for what it gives. So yeah, I feel like that's like, dude, that move makes no sense.
The vertical at the top, like it's so funny. Like,
it makes no. It's also just like it's also fully invincible. Like why? Not fully, but it has some invisibility to down smash. Anyway, yeah, I think that's like for me the final point on Sora. I think like the fact that even killing for him is a matter of like either, like Tony said, like very slowly working up to a point where you get an up air, like, you know, 120-ish, or getting like a hard read, or, you know, like a solid read that you had to work relatively hard for. That just puts a lot more pressure on you mentally, right? To gather the right information at the right time.
Yeah, for sure. And even I think up smash is probably the most like confirmed into smash attack. I know Kameme tried to go for it a couple times, but if you get a really, really low falling fair, you can sometimes, depending on the character, combo it in the forward smash, and those confirms get wacky. Like in terms of like if you're thinking about Sora cheesing someone, Sora's biggest cheese outside of like just edge guarding, like combo cheese, is going to be the falling
fair F smash.
Yeah, fair one F smash first.
He can reversal with it too, and it can 2-frame. He can 2-frame falling fair forward smash you, which is super cheesy, but also like good luck getting that with the floaty jump.
Right, and like that's the kind of stuff that it's like generally hard to hit confirm. Like if
you know, Nair can 2-frame as well.
Oh, it hits
I did
really
not
low.
know, but
it's really low.
It makes sense.
The very first one. So I mean, and even just confirming into up smash as well, right? I think against Sharp, Kameme had some rage, and after the up smash, like it was like a nair or a down tilt in the up smash. It was like, and obviously Sheik is really light, but it was under triple digits. It was under 100% after the up smash connected, and Sharp just died off the top. And I was like, wow, that is a very, very strong move, and just how high Sharp, because like that's another thing, because up smash is well, one, very powerful, two, it hits so high up, so when you get these certain down tilts that launch them really high up, or nair 1-2 that launch them pretty high up, and then you up smash, you got to think the character's so high up off the ground already, then they're getting hit in that airspace, you know, they're closer to that top blast zone, right? So can even affect some percentages where you're like, wow, that up smash connected but didn't KO, but another one connected but it KO'd so much earlier. You gotta think like, well, how high up, because that hitbox is so big. So yeah, I mean, having these either just like raw hit smash attacks, or even just ways to confirm into them is obviously another, you know, big one. And I think that's the main thing. That's the most important thing to take out of Sora's combo game. And I think that was Kameme's main strategy, right? Where it's like, okay, I'm not gonna go for these crazy combos. I just need confirms. Like even if I'm just like getting these straight hits with Nair, like maybe do one loop for extra damage, but like the main thing Kameme had to make sure he had down and it clutched them out so many sets are confirms in the smash attacks, right? Like even like the super simple ones where he didn't even do, like there's sometimes he didn't even have to IDJ. It was like Nair 1, Nair 2, up smash. And like that was a wrap. Sometimes he had to IDJ it, sometimes he didn't. But I think that was like the main stuff. But I mean, nonetheless, shout outs to Kameme, right? He did a
huge shout outs.
Yep.
So for me personally, I think that what Kameme did differently from every other Sora player we see over here in the US is exerting his stage control. And also, specifically, he had actually what I usually consider to be the shulk weakness of, if you're familiar enough with the character and you know what the context of specific setups are, then you'll know everything that they're about to do. Like every single time one of his opponents reached back throw kill percent roughly, he would go over and literally stand there and wait for a ledge roll and hope they would do it. And then if he saw them ledge jump, he'd up air to cut off them going to center and just make sure they go to corner. And he'd just fight people for center. And then anytime he would get a setup, instead of going for a combo, he would basically just cover a good position, let them take bad positions out of stun. And then if they tried to fight him for like center or whatnot, then he challenged them there and then they'd eat another combo. And so I think that was a good way for him to play it. Regarding Thundaga, my perception of the move is that it fulfills entirely different roles than the other two. So I think Blizzaga is pretty straightforward. It's a multi-hit move that sets up and puts people into position. Sometimes they'll just get caught by KO moves. Even if they don't, they still take damage and you don't mind. And then obviously Faraga is just, it's a setup move. You don't want to block it. You don't want to get hit by it. Usually the way Kameme used it is he would run up behind it. Now, one thing Kameme does is the most common play around Faraga is that you just jump over it and then swing, so that if he tries to follow up off of it, you'll hit him for it, and even if he doesn't, then you're usually protecting yourself, and he can't do it again because he has to rotate through his specials. Except one thing he does is he'll shoot the Faraga and then he'll try and short hop in and then space out his Sora essentially has cloud backer. And so he would just go ahead and space that out. If he sees you jump, he'll immediately swing. If he doesn't see you jump, he'll just delay the backer a little bit so that it's fast, and then he'll retreat back out. If you chase him, you'll get hit. If you just walk up and take the stage control, then you play the slow choke again. And that's a lot of people lost right then and there at that interaction because they would try and challenge him. And even if they got hit, they'd think, well, this time's different. I'll just be faster this time. And then they get hit again because you can't outplay speed if you just don't have the space. And Kameme had the spaces scouted. He didn't try and hit ledge jumps directly. You'd usually see him on reaction to ledge jump. He would up air the platform. And then people would just ledge jump and then they try and go straight for center. They get hit by the up air. If people double jumped around it, then he'd just fall with the up air and then just get ready to punish their landing. Same stuff that we see like a lot of R.O.B players do with R.O.B Nair when they're ledge trapping. He would usually cut off ledge roll and then he just didn't try and hit people for using ledge get up. Like he just let them. One of the other big things that we saw a lot of is Kameme acknowledges how good ledge jump is. So most of his ledge options were based around ledge jump. And then if he thinks that you are preemptively swinging, so if he sees you doing something or spacing yourself so that you can swing his ledge jumps, then he'll just burst from ledge. And then Sora is very good at bursting from ledge. He has multiple double jump aerials that can reach you with multi hits. So you have implied safety by just swinging and then threatening to swing more and then just not, which is also one of the bases of his neutral. He would use, you saw him use side B a lot in these positions where he would just ledge drop double jump side B. And then even if you moved around it, sometimes he could catch you on the backswing because you just didn't move around it in the correct follow-up position either. And so he'd hit you with the second one. So things like this allowed him to basically reversal people from disadvantage while maintaining his own advantage on stage. And then obviously no one really edge guarded him that well. To be fair, Sora is not straightforward to edge guard, but what you need to understand when you are planning to edge guard the character is that his up B is one direction. So it's the hitbox is going to be in the direction that he's facing, which means that if you get behind him, then you can swing from behind him. And unless he reverses it, you're going to hit him. And so it's essentially a directional 50-50. And so usually what you would see is he would just drift unchallenged so that he could reverse up B to protect himself and keep the stage at his back. Except in order for him to get into that position, that's where the vulnerability of Sora's drift is when he's recovering on stage. And then on top of that, this is where Thundaga is very useful, is it's a very low commitment anti-air that he can use in the air. And so he would use the Thundaga while he's drifting back the stage both A, because he didn't want it when he got back on the stage, as you gentlemen mentioned, but B, it also you saw multiple players try and challenge him off stage. I think Zamba, Sonics, et cetera, all tried to challenge him.
I'm literally looking at Zamba do that right now.
So,
Get Thundaga.
He got Thundaga.
Yeah.
Everybody, I don't think I noticed him get hit for trying to Thundaga a single time when he was off stage. So basically, Thundaga is unsafe horizontally, despite what it looks like, but it's safe vertically. And you could also see that in that a lot of the times when he would use it on stage to try and get rid of it, he would usually do something like full hop onto a platform with a Thundaga, and he'd usually full hop back also, so that he's essentially retreating it from full stage to get rid of it, and that would make it safe. And then, as we have mentioned, there is implied value in just being able to Thundaga on stage, because it means that you're going to have access to one of those better specials. And so you're making yourself a better character on stage for using it, but just off stage, you would rather have Thundaga than if you had Faraga or Blizzaga, because it just hits in those unique angles, and it's so disjointed, even relative to like his up air. It's just so disjointed and low commitment. And then on top of that, one of the key principles of ledge trapping well is you have to keep people from trying to jump over your ledge traps in the first place. And Thundaga is one of the best tools in the game for that, because you can just shoot it preemptively. If they challenge you, they usually are going to have to do so by air dodging it. And if they air dodge it, then you can just frame trap them and hit them back out, and then they don't have whatever resource they use to try and go over it. So then they're going to have to accept the ledge trap. The obviously he didn't really commit hits until his opponent would put themselves in the corner. So if you watch him play, usually what happens is he'll retreat, his opponent retreats, and this will just happen several times in a row, and eventually his opponent will retreat too much, and then he'll just feint to try and bait his opponent into retreating a second time. And then once they're in the corner, that's when he would commit, and that's when he would use the Rekka, which is essentially are you going to swing 2-3 times? Are you going to swing once? And then the implied threat of that. So that's the basis of most of his swings. And so he would get his opponent to block theoretical swings. And so you have his opponent holding shield extra long, and then they're taking passive shield damage, because in Smash, just holding shield without doing anything else gives you shield damage. And then eventually you reach a point where he can just commit with the Blizzaga in, and then you'll see him drift in, and he'll shoot the Blizzaga above their head so that he covers their jump, and then it'll usually just shield stab their head, even if they do try and block it. And then if they try and press something out, Blizzaga is also very disjointed, because it's a small projectile essentially. So and once he caught you in that corner, that's when he would press his advantage. And if he didn't have that advantage, he wouldn't risk it at all. And so it was just very, you can see how calm and collected he is, just looking at him in the player cam, just seeing how slow and deliberate his play is, even in the game 5 scenarios, even in the timer scenarios. Kameme, just an outstanding mentality. I'd say most of the players in those finals were just unusually strong mental games that weekend. I know I got so stressed watching some of those matches, I felt sick, and then I just see these people just iron faced, just playing the game. It was some impressive stuff. But
no, it was godlike, man.
I think those were my personal big takeaways, and I do think that the way Kameme is playing and is continuing to take the character is emphasizing these features, and I do think that that is where Sora is supposed to go. So I think that rather than pushing combos, I would like to see him pushing more on just the simple confirms. It's the little things like Faraga to Fireball, because it's low damage. It does like maybe, but it will put the opponent off stage pretty much every single time. From
Faraga
the fair, right?
Yeah, Faraga fair, dash attack, grab. Which one? You said Faraga to Fireball.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Faraga to dash attack is the confirm.
Yep, it's really good.
He can still confirm off of it. So like that stuff is just so powerful. Even if he gets a winning situation, no matter what, Kameme's ability to capitalize and respond to those situations appropriately and consistently was very powerful. And I think he can still improve on those further than he already has. I think he's already improved most of what he's going to.
For sure. Side note, I know you were talking about kind of things to look out when you're trying to edgeguard Sora. like also to obviously like one big thing is his like side B. Like I still see a lot of people not realizing that he can only go that one direction. Like when he's
Left
recovering,
right.
like he's
Yep.
yeah. So like he's just gonna go So he's like sorry. Like he's just only. I rather he only is gonna go horizontal. I
For the
meant.
first one,
So-
yeah.
for the first one, right? So that's really, really important because obviously, like, unless they're trying to go for like some super fake, right? And they're like just going out and then trying to come back in, like most of the time, like you're gonna see a lot of these Soras, right? They will go and they're gonna like they have no hitbox there, right? So if you're on top, you just go ahead and you can go for a spike. And I see a lot of people. I mean, even like I'm looking right now, right? Like Zaba kind of missing those kind of sequences where it was very clear that that's the way he had to recover, and if he does so, he just will just get bodied. So that is one thing I don't see that nearly enough people combat like Sora's off of. That being said, he does have some mix-ups. Of course, he can always go away and then go up around. Obviously, Tony already talked about the Thundaga, but just to put that out there for people because I see that way too often when Soras are just getting there for free, and it is a risk. They are taking a risk by doing so.
His recovery goes far, but it is slow at moving. So you have a lot of time to react to what his position is instead of like a good mix-up.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, I think we all can agree that a character like Sheik has a better recovery than Sora because like Sheik's happens snappier, quicker, has ledge mix-ups. You're literally invincible in the startup of her up B. It can reversal you, where Sora's can also reversal you. But I mean, like again, a character like Sheik.
You have time. You have time, and if you know how to deal with
yeah.
the different different avenues he takes, then it becomes harder. I mean, that being said, like character can still like be strong with their recovery, but there's definitely enough time to react. Yeah, they have to mix it up.
The worst thing for Sora is that counter characters just mess up his recovery. Like I play Shulk, my counter sucks in the air. It's like slow as hell. I can counter his side B and up B, and it will still hit. Which like that doesn't happen in matchups often. So like, yeah, like if you have any sort of counter in your moveset, you can probably mess Sora up off stage in a relatively guaranteed way, or at least like limit his options so much that it becomes like a very advantageous mix up.
Because
absolutely.
The main thing you want to hit, and this is actually something Kameme did really well, is not like I see so many Sora players that they feel like they have to up B first. You got 3 side Bs. There was so many times Kameme would just like double jump and like in the middle of the double jump or not even double jump, just kind of like fall and just go straight into side B. Because the issue with going up B into side B is you have to side B and you can only go 2 directions. So and like if you go out, then you have to come back in some way, shape, or form. So you really only have like one use of side B if you go out from the stage, because then you got to use the other one to kind of get back to somewhat of a position you were in, and then use the other one to get back, right? So what you really want to do when you're edge guarding Sora is you want to force them to up B, but it just depends, right? Like Tony said, they can like come really low, double jump, reverse up B. That's particularly very safe, right? And you can kind of cut that avenue out, but essentially, if the stage, like if the ledge is my fingertips, and you see a Sora just up B over here, you know they have to go into side B. So you can, and then up B takes so long. You're just standing here, or maybe you're a floaty and you're just like floating out here. You see the up B twirl out, you know they have to side B, and you probably know they're gonna do it towards the stage, right? So you abuse the end lag of up B and the startup of side B because you know that has to happen, and you time your attack in that little bridge, right? At that in between, that's when you hit. And the fact that you're reacting to this, that's the broken thing. Like obviously, like you can always hit any character's recovery for the most part, right? But the thing that makes like characters like Fox or Sora, like that example I'm giving, is you are standing in a position, you react, you see something and react to it, and you know that there's a guaranteed hit window that you can hit them with, right? So like obviously like illusion for like any spacey or like Fox or Falco, right? They have the startup. Falco's being a little bit better because it's quicker, so that time window is a little harder, right? But Fox has a little bit more, so it's like, okay, you see illusion, time your 2 frame, right? Like it's kind of like that in a sense, but you're getting more reward because it's way off stage, and you can hit something like a counter or a down air or whatever, right? Realistically, if you force Sora to up B to recover, you're probably in a good spot. If they have to like if it's not to ledge, right? Which is why I think Kameme's not every single recovery was pristine, obviously, but there's a lot of times Kameme just didn't up B, which is, in my opinion, the correct thing to do, right? Because you have
Yeah.
way more mix, and
I
side B
agree.
is
Yeah.
way faster. And I even want to shout out Kameme for using like I think I saw like jump out of shield side Bs as certain punishes in certain situations, which was like really crazy. Maybe I'm tripping on that, and he was just like drop shielding into it. But there are some times where it's like he would be in mid range, and I would just see like side B, like, and he's shielding, and I'll just see side B. I'm like, dang, did he just like jump out of shield side B as like
There are some Soras that will do the side B like as punishes too, like interestingly enough, or sometimes they'll do the side B and then it'll like if you don't like you can set up a tech chase situation sometimes too.
On the
tech chase.
platforms,
Yep.
yeah.
That's
Into
a
up smash,
standard
which is
one.
also
Yep, and up
insane.
smash because it covers everywhere for some unknown reason.
The crazy thing
Yeah.
about side B is that it's aerial burst range, which is super rare. Like most characters have like a dash attack on the ground, but like I worked with San or Sun, whatever, like the Ike player from like upstate New York,
Sam,
and like something that we talked about is he would like jump at someone, and then like Ike's jump is very linear, right? And he would use like wave bounce quick draw to establish burst range from the air, which is not like something that you can do every single time because the risk reward is fucking ass, right? But you establish it once, and suddenly you jump at like dash distance, and they have to shield because you could be quick drawing, which is an enormous power boost to your jumps. And Sora has that in his side B as well, which is a little bit more safe than quick draw too, because it has a bit of a multi-hit mix-up, even though there's like a 20 frame window in between hits, which you can definitely capitalize on. Anyway, point being, it gives him burst range in the air, which is rare, and I think that can be a very powerful thing if used sparingly.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and it's a Rekka as well, right? And there,
Yeah, it's a Rekka.
I even saw
Yeah.
A shitty Rekka, but it's a Rekka.
Yeah, really
Yeah.
trash Rekka, but a Rekka nonetheless, and definitely works in the context of Smash.
It's so bad, but you'd be surprised how often you see it work. Like it works so
I
many
hate
times
it.
in bracket. It just works. It's like minus. So if you didn't know, hearing this, each time that he uses a side B, it becomes less safe on block. But people just straight up weren't punishing it consistently. It's a set timing. He can't mix up when he's doing it like the rest of his Rekkas. So usually one of the threats is, am I going to delay it just a little bit enough so that if you try and parry this, it's off time. You can't do that with Sora's side
So
B.
you
It's going to be
always
the
go
same
for the
time every
parry
time.
on the next hit, and if they don't
Yeah.
do it, you're dropping your shield anyway to get the punish. That's a
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You
that's
don't
what
even
makes it-
like you can just like up smash or like aerial out of shield. Like there's literally about
big
like
gap.
20 there's literally like 20 frames between the hits. Like that means that if you have an up smash, like even Ridley can like out of shield it. Even Sephiroth can out of shield it. Come on, man. You move suck.
But that up smash is kind of nice.
That's
Ridley
true.
up
That's
smash is
true.
Crazy.
That's true. It's true.
Mhm.
Bad
I guess
example, but you guys know what I mean.
Yeah.
Shulk can up smash it out of shield. See,
There
that's
you
a good
go.
example. That's a frame 18 up smash, and it works. So you can punish it. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Both sides of show. Do you scoop
It
both?
does, and the scoop is fucking huge, and it's active for 4 frames. You can up smash on a less trap and hit both a normal get up and a roll, and the scoop is active for 4 frames, and it kills it like 60 in smash hard. It's
That's cool. No big deal.
toxic. Love it.
Yeah.
He needs
Well,
it.
something I don't think we really mentioned is that Sora has some of the strongest hurtbox distortion in the game.
Ooh, true.
Like just the way he shifts his body when he moves attacks, like things like reverse nair are so he can basically nair Fox's shield, land next to Fox. Fox can up smash and it'll just straight up pass through his body without hitting him because of the way his hurtbox shifts. So he leans forward into the sword during it, and so he basically just kind of like belly bursts forward to dodge whatever buttons come in his way. It's just really strong stuff. He crouches for his down tilt right away.
Mhm.
He usually goes low when he up tilts, and that's one of the better anti-airs in the game.
Mhm.
There's just, I'm pretty sure every single button he has a strong hurtbox shift.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean, hurtbox shifting is something. I mean, a lot of people think highly of Pikachu, and that's one of the things that is really good with Pikachu is hurtbox.
Yeah,
shifting.
Pikachu, Joker,
Right. I think
Ages.
Ages. Mm-hmm.
SDI and hurtbox shifting are things that we look more into as the meta develops deeper and deeper into the meta as we're now like what 3 4 years into the meta. Now we're getting farther and farther. Those are things where it's like, okay, we really have to care about this kind of stuff because that's the kind of stuff that clutches out a lot of games, right? Or and it's cool to see like even SDIing being a really big part of it. And that I mean that's another thing too that we didn't even talk about. I know we didn't want to go too much into the combo game, but SDI does help versus Sora's combo game too. So that could be another thing that not too much people are familiar with on like how to do and stuff like that. Any combo string that just has the more hits that it has into it, that's more opportunities to SDI. Like a Pikachu back air combo, like it just has so many hits that you have more opportunity to SDI. So yeah, things to look into.
The neutral airs do have like significantly reduced hit lag. So while I just looked it up on the data viewer, the SDI multiplier is normal, so it's like a 1.0 multiplier, which means you can SDI his nairs, for example. But like his nair one has a 0.25 hit lag multiplier, which means that you only get a quarter of the hit lag that you normally do. So it can be a little bit rough to get the correct SDI because essentially when people SDI, they're like quarter circling, and with a little bit unfortunate timing, you might just get suboptimal SDI and
Right.
kind of go nowhere. So
So a little
yeah,
harder.
definitely, yeah, should try to SDI because like why not? You're not really actionable anyway. But it doesn't sound like super consistent unless you're super familiar with like the SDI hit timings.
Which is why like I think it's kind of stronger. Like it's so I think it's harder than it may appear, or easier rather than it may appear for people to like kind of extend some of these columns because of those things, because of the nuance of like the SCM up, like the hit lag, and like the fact that like again he drifts, man. He freaking drifts. Like
he schmoves.
Yeah, he definitely schmoves. And even for myself, kind of like practicing some of those things more so, like using it, like friendlies and some tournament stuff too. Like it's definitely a bit more easier. But again, I think that we've kind of gone through that, that nuance of the combo game.
Yeah.
It is worth noting you want to be careful where you're SDIing Soras hits, because if you accidentally SDI into the Tipper versions, for example, he is going to have increased stun on it, and so even in spots where you would normally fall out, that extra stun will force you to have landing lag, and so then that compounds further, and so you'll have forced landing lag plus 10 frame stun, and he'll be able to pretty much just start pressuring you again. You want to try and mix it up. That's kind of why it's so difficult to combo Sora, is just because it's so difficult for him to choose whether or not he's drifting out to catch your drift away, catch your SDI in, things like that.
And it's not like
So,
you're reacting either. Like that, all of when you get to that point of the Sora combos where you're like trying to touch death people, like I feel like you're reading the DI. It's very hard. It's not like Smash 4 Bayo where like you're reacting to their SDI because the up B like takes so long and you're like seeing stuff happen, right? So yeah, you're kind of just like ripping it and you're like, okay, well I think they're gonna DI in this direction, so I'm gonna try to take the combo, here, which could add, I mean, we've hyped up the Sora combos and stuff like that, but we never really went super in depth about it, like the actual routes. I mean, we're not going to break down the actual move routes. If you guys want to check out Dusty Carpet's video on that, actually, he has a very very good video to like break down all of the Sora combos and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, could later on, even if someone is able to do that, could be unreliable in that sense too, right? Where they have to kind of like read the routes and stuff like that, which is why I think like the way Kameme is playing Sora is I much so enjoy it. You know what I mean? I think he's taking the right route, and he understand, and I mean he's such a good player. He's been a top player for he's been competing since Brawl, I believe, right? So I mean, very experienced player. He's gone through the motions of taking difficult characters to incredible heights. He is one of the players that actually premiered Smash 4 Mega Man. We've never seen top level Smash 4 Mega Man until he showed up at, I believe it was an Evo, and really showcased what the character could do, right? All the footstool stuff and all that stuff. So definitely not Kameme's first rodeo, and taking a character where it's like, well, there's other top tiers that can definitely do like this or even more with way less effort, but yeah, fuck it, I like it, so I'm gonna do this, right? So it's cool to see, and if you know the history of Kameme too, it's even more hype. You know.
Yeah, for sure. Cannot agree more. I guess we're moving on to our final ring around the rosy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Final
Let's get it.
thoughts.
Charles, tell me, what do you think?
About Sora.
Yeah.
I still have like my same opinions about Sora. I definitely agree with Tony in a sense of like economically, you know, with your time economic wise, not worth. Absolutely not worth. There,
Absolutely not
there
worth.
are so many characters that are so good in this game that take way less effort. But if you really like Sora, I would use Kameme's style as a roadmap. Um, I will always say this: Fundies always comes first. I will. So if you're super interested in the combo game, though, you know, Lab Sora, I would highly recommend instead of trying to do like touch of death kind of stuff, I would always try to lab confirms out first. Like the way, you know what I mean? Like confirms are always the most important thing. Can you kill someone off of a stray nair? Very important question. Very impactful if you can, right? And we've even seen Kameme's like practically his whole style revolves around neutral air, right? Like watch the neutral, and like a lot of his is nair, but there's many layers to the nair. And the reason why there's so many layers to it is because he has the ability to connect into smash attacks off of it, right? If he didn't have that ability, it would be a meme. Like no one would give a fuck about getting hit by nair. It's just okay, whatever, right? Unless like obviously the advantage state afterwards could be a threat, but yeah, I still think Sora is around that like top 20 to top 30. Could be maybe higher, but it's so hard when a character has a blaring weakness as much as your double jump sucking like that, and you don't have a good move to mash. Like Ness has that in a sense where it's like, oh yeah, it's really hard for him to double jump out of combos, but at least he has like a pretty solid like frame 5, I believe, nair. It's like pretty quick, frame 3 to 5.
And PK magnet too.
Right, like you have solid
Yeah.
hits, right? Out of those kind of juggle situations.
Phi magnet, whatever.
But yeah, it's like it's so hard for me to justify anything higher than top 20 with Sora, just because it's like, well, what do you lose to? Characters that juggle you really hard, and like I think really quick characters can, you know, do a number on Sora in a sense where it's like when when they're locked on Thundaga, it's like, oh, okay, well, now you got Thundaga. Now you really only have Nair and some other like maybe up air, like your active hitboxes, right? But fast characters can really like get in there, shield those, punish stuff like that. So I don't. At that point, you have to push Sora even farther. You need a touch of death, right? At that point, it's like, oh well, I lose to these things, but I touch you once and you die. So I think realistically, Sora for me kind of still hovers around that top 20 to 30 ish area, right? With the tools that he has. So I am very interested to see how far Kameme can push the character. I do think it would be very good for Kameme to have certain pockets. I think solo Sora is pretty difficult, and we saw the Mega Man come out like against Light, game 3, kind of as a last ditch effort of like, fuck, it's not working. Let me try the Mega Man. Um, but we'll see. I don't know if Mega Man's a really good character to match up with Sora, so to speak. I just to, it feels like to me that they would kind of lose to the same-ish kind of archetypes. So we'll see if Kameme sticks it out with the solo Sora. We'll see if the Mega Man comes more into play. Maybe he picks up another character. I know he has Sheik as well. Kameme has a really solid Sheik. Maybe he could lean more towards that. Would make sense. But yeah, that's so. I mean, really great discussion overall. But my opinions are about the same. But it was really cool to just like talk about the different aspects of Sora with you guys and just kind of see what direction this character is going.
I think that it is very interesting how many surprising ways Kameme tends to make his decisions. Specifically, his characters are essentially opposites of each other, and they're all characters that you can't really secondary with each other. And he plays
very
like 3 or
hard.
4 of them.
Yeah, he plays
He
really
does.
difficult. Like, man, Kameme's got like the most difficult lineup. You know what I mean? Like,
Sheik,
crazy.
Mega Man, and Sora, like these are all characters that can't really put into top 8s, and he manages to consistently make top 8s at majors with at least one of these. So the I think it's really funny that's so. it really surprised me when he stayed with Sora, just because he has traditionally stayed with some of the very heaviest or fastest falling characters, specifically in Mega Man and Sheik. Like he likes being able to move vertically very quickly, and Sora is one of the worst characters in the game at doing that. Like he's Rosalina tier of I can't get down once I get up. So I'm just I think it's very interesting. I think he himself is a very respectable competitor. I respect his sportsmanship a lot. I respect his attitude toward the game and his ability to maintain his composure. I really like the way that Kameme has maintained his stage control, and I hold him in a class of with like a Gact is probably the best stage controlling Japanese players that come to mind. So it makes me happy to see him doing well. I respect his work a lot, and I look forward to learning more from Kameme. I look forward to seeing where he continues pushing Sora, regardless of how good Sora is or isn't. I think Kameme Sora will be just fine.
Bam. Do you want to, or should I'm cool.
It's up to you.
All right. So, I said this earlier in the podcast, but Sora has an insane amount of skill expression, and I think that will always be extremely cool. I think
expression.
in Ultimate and yeah,
That's a
I
really
think
cool
Ultimate.
word. That's a sick word. Skill.
It is, but it's to me a very important word too, because I think Ultimate is severely lacking in skill expression within the realm of characters. So for players, there is skill expression, though it's a little bit more nuanced than in previous games. But within characters, it's like let me put it this way. A bit more towards player expression rather than skill expression, but the player expression for a lot of characters is also very limited, right? So if you think about Byleth, the way the best Byleth in the world plays is probably the same way that Leo plays. And if we had a second best Byleth in the world who's like close to the level, they would not have a very different playstyle than Leo, right? Like I think that is very uniform, and I think that is the case for like almost all Ultimate characters, but not Sora. I think if we had like two Soras at like really, really high level, I think they would play entirely differently, because the character has so much player and skill expression that you will really see like, okay, this is the human behind the player. And that to me makes the character like infinitely cooler than like all of the other characters that like you put two Kens next to each other, I'll be like, all right, yeah, it's Ken. It's Ken. I don't know, man.
How about Sonic, though?
How about Sonic? I mean, depends. I think Sonic, theoretically, no. Practically, yes. Is that a good answer, Bam? Yeah. But Sora definitely has a lot of that, and I think that's really, really cool. And I think that to me also means that like I think I see why Tony says like, oh yeah, or was it Charles who said like, oh yeah, the way that Kameme plays Sora, I think that's the way to go, right? I think the way Kameme plays Sora is one of the ways to go. And I think a Sora that focuses more on combos, I think that's one of the ways to go. Personally, I put my eggs in the Sora that is a little bit more spell focused and has like really good management of the spells and decisions that are strategically based around the spells. I think there's a lot more to explore in that design space. And I think all of those paths have their own like merits and demerits. And I think that's what makes the character cool. I just hope to see more Sora. I know Hazmat is gonna fucking hate me, but I hope to see more Sora. I think just seeing how people, express themselves through a character with that many variations will never be boring to me. So yeah, Dusty, go to more events. Kameme, keep showing up, and let's get Hazmat off of the commentary blocks forever. He doesn't want to see Sora on top 8. I know how it is. He's gonna no-show. He's gonna no-show. I know how it is.
He would.
How sorry, Haz. I loved you at Summon, man. I loved you. It's just hater energy.
The ops, dude.
The ops.
The ops, dude.
The pull up.
Yeah. Real quick, I mean, I'll just add my 2 cents. First off, shout outs to, I think his name is pronounced Opana. I'm sure everyone's seen him on Twitter. He's definitely the one who's been showcasing a lot of like his combos in like, friendlies and some tournament sets and stuff too, getting some of the 0 to deaths and everything. So shout outs to him. He's definitely someone who's been leaning heavily into that combo oriented Sora. Not much to say outside of, yes, I do believe that spells are going to be stuff that people should be pushing forward. I do think, and maybe I think so more so than anyone else in this podcast. I do think that there's not as there's so there are a lot of variables when it comes to his combo game, but I think that a lot of them can be circumvented by the fact, like we talked a little bit about it before, about the fact that it's like the record because he also has his movement too. His air mobility is so damn good. So I think he can actually compensate for a lot of these things more so than people initially believe. And that's just kind of like from my experience and just from some of the other sources I've seen that who've been leaning more into that combo oriented. That being said, people need to stop focusing on that. Look at the other avenues. I will forever push that there's a lot of characters in this game that I do believe would be higher if people got better at edge guarding and really broke down to certain spaces that characters essentially have to be, otherwise they're screwed. Or they have to take a hell of a risk to recover. There's quite a bit of characters in this game that kind of fall into that territory, and Sora essentially has all the tools necessary to really body some characters in that regard. You know, like he has a lot of those things, and so I think people need to push forward in that way. Obviously, and everyone's already said it. I know Ramses, you're super advocate of the spells. Like, yes, spells are really, really strong. Get that stuff down. Fire God, Blulaga, like is insane. Thundaga in terms of a reason. Thundaga is still like, like, obviously if you got rid of it, it would be better. But like
use the
taunt
necessary.
Yeah,
use the taunt to feint Thundaga.
Oh
he does the same animation. He does the
There
same
we
animation.
go. This goon, dude. This goon. Yeah, man. I do hope to see some more people play the character. Not because I necessarily think this character is some certified top tier or anything like that. But I think there's a lot of people who really enjoy this character, and I have seen some people at time thinking like, man, can this character even be viable? I do think the character can be at a point where it's viable. I just think it takes a lot of work to do it, but I do think it's there. I think Kameme is showing some avenues of it, but there's still different routes for this character, and yeah, I want to see some more Soras come out of the woodworks. I play with a couple people who have kind of really focused on maining Sora, and it's a hard path for them, so good luck on that. But it's fun to see the different ways that this character can be really played. And I love seeing characters like that because I will say, and I know Ramses has been saying already in terms of skill expression, that is something that's really big for me. I love that to death, especially when it comes to movement. I was super big on that in Smash 4. I was a little sad that movement got easier when going to Ultimate, but I was very happy that people can feel that way, feel that kind of advanced movement, so to speak. But I love when people play different ways. That's something that I've always loved in every fighting game. I know you were talking about El Fuerte, so I mean, even kind of throw it back to like we'll talk about Gamer B. Like you always knew when Gamer B was playing, right? Like you knew he was playing, right? You know when when Marn was playing Dudley, right? Versus like it's just like that is some of the most beautiful aspects of a fighting game to me. And so whenever I see characters that can exemplify that, I want to see them, especially if they can be viable. They may not be the best to put all your eggs in the basket, but if you love the character, I want to see you thrive. So that's all I got to say about that.
I was really hoping that Opana was going to make it to Glitch because I think that having I believe it was Wilds, or no, not Wilds, I can't remember the name of the solo Sora who made it through top 32.
Kameme?
The other one.
I got you, Tony.
There was a second solo Sora in the top 32 who also made a very impressive run, and I can't recall his tag off the top of my head. Now I feel bad. The Wilds was I believe he was a Kazuya, and that was also his first top 32.
I see.
So Wilds also made a very impressive run, but I was hoping to see Opana in that top 32, and I'm sure I'm not alone. So I think Opana is going to do some interesting things.
Soon.
All right, well, that's going to be it for this episode. We got to head out, but I hope you guys enjoyed the content. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know what you think about Sora. And until next time, class dismissed.